Air raid sirens sound around Ukraine. Russia's president orders an attack. The international community making desperate pleas.
President Putin, in the name of humanity, bring your troops back to Russia.
Ukraine now under martial law. Australia joining the widespread condemnation of the move.
We denounce what are unilateral hostile actions in Ukraine. Russia is flagrantly breaching international law.
We'll have the latest from Ukraine and reactions from around the world.
This is SBS World News with Janice Peterson.
Good evening. Ukraine is tonight under attack from its neighbour Russia. In a dramatic escalation today, there have been simultaneous attacks from the northeast and south. Explosions have been reported in several parts of the country, including in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, Odessa and Kharkiv. The situation is rapidly developing, but this is what's happened so far. As the UN Security Council convened an emergency meeting calling on Russia to give peace a chance, Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced a military operation in Ukraine's Donbas region. NATO condemning it as a reckless attack, putting countless civilian lives at risk. At home, Scott Morrison has been echoing the condemnation. We will have comprehensive coverage and the latest developments. But let's first go to our chief international correspondent, Ben Lewis. He's joining us from Lviv in Ukraine. Good evening, Ben. The warning signs have certainly been there.
Janice, absolutely, but there is still a feeling of near total disbelief here in Ukraine this morning. Ukrainians have been living with Russian threats and aggression for many years now, and people here had been following the build-up of troops on the border closely, but few thought that Vladimir Putin would actually pull the trigger in this day and age. The Ukrainian government says there have already been hundreds of casualties, and it appears that so far Russia's military operation has largely been targeting Ukrainian military bases and airports right around the country. This is likely just step one in what will be an incredibly bloody conflict. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has begun. The port city of Mariupol under heavy fire. In Kharkiv, the sound of explosions on the city outskirts. A major Ukrainian Air Force base, one of the targets. In Kyiv, home to 3 million people, air raid sirens and a warning to take cover. Missile strikes hitting nearby military facilities and airports.
This is the first time. This is the first time that we've heard anything. It's been absolutely silent in this city throughout the course of tonight and for past several weeks.
The Russian president's decision revealed in the early hours of the morning.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима.
But the address appears to have been recorded some days ago, authorising the movement of Russian troops into Ukraine to ensure what he's calling the demilitarisation of the country. Mr. Putin accused the United States and its allies of ignoring his security demands, telling Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their arms and they will be spared, with a warning for those in the West who dare stand in his way.
Что ответ России будет незамедлительным и приведет вас к таким последствиям, с которыми вы в своей истории еще никогда не сталкивались.
Mr. Putin's declaration came hours after the leaders of two separatist states in eastern Ukraine issued a formal request to the Russian government for military assistance, falsely accusing the Ukrainian government of planning an assault on the region.
This is right out of the Russian playbook to manufacture a provocation as a justification for invading Ukraine.
The US president delivering swift condemnation of what he described as an unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. Russia alone is responsible for the death and destruction this attack will bring, and the United States and its allies and partners will respond in a united and decisive way. The world will hold Russia accountable. Ukraine's foreign minister declaring this a full-scale invasion. Peaceful Ukrainian cities are under strikes. This is a war of aggression. Ukraine will defend itself and will win. Ukraine's National Security Council, having approved a state of emergency yesterday, today declared martial law. Having talked down the risk of conflict, Ukraine's president, in his own late-night address, was no longer holding back on the threat.
И этот шаг может стать началом большой войны на европейском континенте.
He said he tried to call the Russian president and received no response.
Well, let's stay with Ben Lewis for more analysis from Lviv. Ben, what options are available for Ukraine now?
Well, Janice, quite simply, they can fight, and that's what President Zelensky says his armed forces are going to do. The president also telling Ukrainian civilians to, for now, stay calm and to remain at home. This morning, Ukraine's defence ministry has claimed it has shot down 5 Russian jets and a Russian helicopter. Now, Moscow denies this. The Russian defence ministry says it has knocked out all of Ukraine's air defence systems and air bases. If that is the case, it essentially gives the Russian military total control of the skies above Ukraine, and we know that all civilian air traffic has been moved out of the region already. We know that Russian troops are also now approaching by land. We have seen vision of tanks heading in from annexed Crimea, and also Russian troops coming down from the north, from Belarus, where 30,000 Russian troops had been engaged with joint exercises with Belarusian forces recently, and there are reports that some Belarusian units are also making their way into Ukraine as well. In the capital, Kiev, we know that tens of thousands of people are trying to get out. The highways are absolutely jammed. They're all heading west to this part of the country, and in particular the city of Lviv here in western Ukraine. It is supposed to be a safer place to be, but at the same time we have heard air raid sirens going off here all morning, and 2 missile strikes have been reported nearby, both at military bases, one north, one south of this city. Janice.
Thanks so much. That's our chief international correspondent, Ben Lewis, joining us from Lviv in Ukraine. And he'll be back a little later in the program for more analysis. Let's return to Ben Lewis in Lviv now. Good evening once again, Ben. We understand there have been more developments. What are you hearing on the ground there?
Yeah, Janice, good evening. It is extraordinary how this invasion is playing out exactly as Western officials had warned it would. It began with devastating missile strikes targeting Ukrainian military bases and airports, and now we have confirmation that Russian troops are making their way on land into Ukraine, many coming down from Belarus, heading towards the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv, and we have also seen evidence of Russian troops on the outskirts of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. The Ukrainian foreign minister is now calling for the world to levy devastating sanctions against Russia, and the European Union says it will be introducing the harshest package of sanctions it has ever implemented.
President Putin, who is bringing war back to Europe. And in these dark hours, the European Union and its people stand by Ukraine and its people. The target is not only Ukraine. The target is the stability in Europe and the whole of the international peace order. And we will hold President Putin accountable for that.
Here in Lviv, the streets are relatively quiet. I have seen queues of people lining up to take money out from ATMs and buy supplies, and other people packing their bags and heading to the nearby Polish border. On Ukrainian television, a message is now being broadcast telling people to remain calm and remain at home. Janice?
Thanks so much, our chief international correspondent, Ben Lewis, updating us on the rapidly changing situation in Ukraine. He will be back later in the bulletin with more analysis. Let's now recap our top story, and here are the main developments. Ukraine's president has declared martial law after accusing Russia of launching a full-scale war. There have been cruise missile strikes targeting military infrastructure in the capital, Kyiv, and other cities. Ukraine says troops invaded from both Russia and Belarus. The US and Western allies have condemned the attack. The UK's Boris Johnson accusing Vladimir Putin of choosing a path of blood and destruction. Let's return to Lviv in Ukraine, where our chief international correspondent Ben Lewis joins us once again. Ben, we understand that many Ukrainians are desperately trying to leave to safety. What are you hearing and seeing there?
Yeah, that's right, Janice. Well, for weeks in Kiev, we spoke to residents who said that they had no plans to go, but at the same time, they never thought that Russian forces would target the Ukrainian capital. Now, missiles are raining down, and so tens of thousands of people are packing their bags, getting in the car and heading as far west as they possibly can. And I've just been speaking to a contact who is close to the Polish border at the moment, who says the situation there is quite chaotic, with so many Ukrainians trying to leave the country and head into Poland. The missiles came down in the early hours of the morning, and it is now clear with daylight that Russia is launching a massive land invasion of Ukraine, with forces coming from every direction. It is 2022. There is war in Europe, and the human cost is going to be enormous. Janice?
It is a history-making day indeed. Thank you so much. That's Ben Lewis with comprehensive coverage from Lviv in Ukraine.